Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Magic Mics, proudly sponsored by CoolStuffInc.com, mana traders, as well as Twitch subs and Patreon supporters just like yourself. I am Evan Irwin, and we get started each week by saying hello to my two co-hosts, Power Dragon.
Hey, what's up, everybody? I think we're gonna have a fun one today.
Yeah, Ruben Wrestler.
What's up? I have to tweet myself.
He has to do things, all right?
Well, you
socially.
Yeah. And if you all want to tweet as well, I just sent out the Magic Mike's podcast is live.
We are super happy to tweet and post things that we are socially doing right now. That's right. So I'm going to go ahead and repost that. Fantastic. If you have missed our pre-show, patrons and subs to this channel get access to our extended version early. And with that, I'm going to kick it off with our first pick. And our code push, use the promo code MagicMics at CoolStuffInc.com to get 5% off your next order and support the show and show your support for the show. 5% off whatever you want. Singles, sealed, your pick, your choice. Use promo code MagicMics at checkout for that discount. And support your favorite streamer with your suggestions at the end of the show to see who we rate tonight. Thanks to our sponsor, CoolStuffInc.com, where you can find cool stuff in stock every day. We kick off our first pick with some banned and restricted talk. There was a recent Magic broadcast where they basically said that on Monday, December 4th, there's going to be a B&R announcement. And they didn't say as much. They kind of alluded to things in the Rakdos scam deck. They alluded to things in Pioneer with Karn. But at the end of the day, they didn't really say anything about Standard. Standard, I think they're fairly happy with. Not that a lot of people are playing it in paper, but either way, they're alluding to a lot of different bans, and maybe there's some unbans, which some people are saying Smuggler's Copter and Pioneer could see an unbanning because, you know, that little copter that was pretty hot stuff back in the day, but isn't quite as hot stuff these days. You know, Jace the Mind Sculptor also says what's up. But, you know, depending on what they do, we could actually see a change in some of these crazy elementals. They might actually ban Fury or Grief or both.
Yeah, you know, I don't know how I feel about unbannings, but it's something people always want, right? Like, let's just do it and see. But like, I'm always of the sense of like, if we know what the current problem is and we solve that, let's do that first before unbanning something else, right? Like, let's ban some things, let's see how things work, and then go, okay, based on what we know now, let's go ahead and unlock this one thing from the vault and see what happens, right? I don't know if we need to do it all at once, but I think there were two issues really that came out of that. One was people being happy that they were talking about more formats more directly, right? Because there was announcements where we went, all right, and everything else is fine. And they're like, well, is it really fine? Are y'all even paying attention to anything? You know, so I think some people just like being acknowledged, right? That you're at least seeing our format that I like. And I think that means something from a PR standpoint. So that was good. The other was the weird discourse from people being upset that they gave you a warning of stuff that's about to come, but then not telling you. So they're like, oh, well, now we're in this state of paralysis and blah, blah. We're not doing it. I'm like, but we did it the other way before. And then people bitched about, well, I wouldn't have went and bought these cards last week if I'd have known there was going to be a banning, you know, right. But it's like they're just not going to win. Right. I think this is a fine, like just the date is still on the calendar. It's been on the calendar.
Right.
They said, we're still going to hold to that since that's what we told people. Expect some news in a week, right? And I'm like, I'm good with that. So if you have a big tournament this weekend, then cool. You buy your stuff because you're playing, you're just doing what you got to do. But if you don't, then hold tight, see what happens, and then pick up your stuff next week.
Now, they alluded that they might be banning Geological Appraiser in Pioneer. And I've played the Discover deck in Explorer, which is, you know, the Arena's version of it. And it's not a very consistent deck. It's a pretty easy deck to figure out what your opponent is playing. And if you play against certain decks like Blue-White or certain decks that have removal or disruption like Thoughtseize, you could just not do anything and die.
Right.
It happens all the time.
Don't you also just lose to 3 counter spells in a row?
Oh, yeah. You never beat Blue-White, like ever. Like it's never happening. So that to me says that it's just kind of a weird niche combo thing.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think it still falls in the category kind of like, what was it? The Tybalt's whatever, where you could just like, counter your own spell and then get your cards or whatever, right? Like, I think it falls in that category of like sometimes it's just going to die to itself. Right. But I think the overall experience of people running into that is just not fun for anybody, right? It's honestly, it's not even fun to play realistically. So, but I don't know. There's a small percentage of people that like that style of Magic, I guess. But I just think in general, if it's not fun to even play against, and honestly, I think it's bad for coverage if you're going to start going down that road again. Like, sure, do something about it. It's fine.
And then you say, well, Abzan Greasefang is kind of technically a turn 4 deck, where or turn 3 if you get lucky, right? Whether this is kind of turn 3 if you discard Magma Opus to get a treasure or whatever.
Yeah, the other thing is that burn can also be a turn 4 deck, right?
Yeah.
Like there are the losing on turn 4 is not the problem. It's the way in which you've lost on turn 4.
Yeah, it's what can interact with you and how many decks are able to interact, I think, if you're trying to go on turn 4.
Right. So, I can see the reasons to kind of sort of just get rid of it. I also, to me, it kind of cracks me up in that they both fixed Cascade and rebroke free spell mechanics.
Right.
Free spell mechanics, It
sure.
did feel like they fixed it there for a minute. And then
this is fixed. This is not hypergenesis.
This is not hypergenesis. This is not,
That's true.
This is not crazy.
That is fair.
It is.
Yeah, this is not Living End. Else. This is not. Yeah,
this is not Rhinos or whatever. Gavin Verity also noted that on Monday, 12/4, there will be a ban list update for the Pauper format. Along with the update, the Pauper format panel will have a video up on Good Morning Magic and a companion written explanation on Daily MTG that goes more in depth. So we'll see what happens to our Pauper friends out there who play that format.
Gotta leave it. I can't comment, but if Maverick Girl is in the chat, then perhaps we can get some. What's the scuttlebutt on on Pauper?
Juice. Well, she doesn't want to spoil anything, so I understand.
No, I don't want to spoiler.
Right. No
I just want to know what people are. What is even good?
Right. What is crushing right now in Pauper?
Oh, stickers. Right. Ooh. So the stickers goblin.
I do remember hearing
is
about
a problem. Is a problem. And the sticker goblin that does help you ramp into Muxus in Pioneer is a big problem from what I understand in
the sticker
Pauper,
goblin only works in Legacy, right?
I thought sticker. Well, it is too. Only. I guess you're right. It's only Legacy, right. But you were able to do it into Muxus in Legacy goblins, I guess.
Yeah,
but
I mean, they were still busting it back then, and it was weird, and it was buggy on Magic Online, and all sorts of weird stuff. That's it. We'll see.
I think it's good news though that they're at least saying, hey, let's sit down and talk about all the formats with the public, right? Again, I don't know if it's totally necessary, but I do get how people feel. Right. And there is something to that. The Wizards, they can at least walk away from Tuesday's announcement or video, I guess, and actually say, hey, at least they're paying attention to us. Right. And then sometimes that's good enough. Right. Just saying, hey, here's how we're looking at Legacy or Vintage. And this is what we think of Modern right now or whatever. Whether you agree with them or not, you at least get something out of them. Right. And it's like, all right, cool. Let's see what happens next week, though, and see if people are still happy whenever they see the results.
The definition of what a balanced format supposed to be, supposed to look like, what it feels like, what's the best, what isn't the best, what's balanced, what's unbalanced, what's unfair, what is fair. I've seen people harken back to be like, this standard format was the greatest of all time, and it was, it was draw go formats. It was the Jace, Hawk formats, and it's like
28 lands, including 4 Stalking Stones and 20 counter spells.
It's like 5 or 6 months ago, I had an argument with somebody because they were saying that the Tempest Urza standard was the best, and I was like, dude, we were playing full standard matches, sideboarding and all in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
What? And that's with the aggro decks, not even the combo decks. Were just play a couple of Shadow Dudes and Hatred, done. Right. Those were match,
I played Prosper Bloom in competitive tournaments. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Red decks were counting up at 16 and seeing if they could kill you. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? On turn 4, right? Just I think we could do this. I'm like, This is crazy.
It was a wild time, but the power level of the cards were built on a different scale.
Oh, absolutely.
And so, you definitely had the Hatred deck, which was a lot more like Modern was when Modern started, where you had all these powerful things, and a lot of times they would just fizzle.
And the question to me is what, is there a perfect format? But I don't know if that's even an answerable question, either
Right.
mathematically or just emotionally, because a lot of this is just like member berries. You know what I mean? Like, you remember you could play Thragtusk? You remember when you could play
Nostalgia's
Like-
a hell of a drug.
Yeah,
Right.
You know?
remember
Man,
Like,
that
I mean,
was the
like,
best
Burial
format,
Rising
dude.
a Restoration Angel to Blink a Thragtusk.
Mhm.
Those were the days.
Exactly. You're like, well, maybe that was your favorite format because you did the best at events when you played
Yes.
that day. You know what I mean? Like, and those things impact people's thoughts and feelings. And this just kind of goes around cyclically. And I've
Yep.
seen this, you know, again, we're on 2 decades or whatever of watching people just like love formats, hate formats for a variety of reasons. And it's hard
Well,
to
one
say
of the
what
things-
the best formats are.
You know, think about nostalgia. I ask people a lot of times what their favorite set is, and then ask them when they started playing. And it's usually one of the first 3 sets around the time they started playing.
Yeah.
Mm.
Like, because that's where you still have this newness and the sense of discovery, and every card's awesome. And you build your first like real deck that does anything. So like, because I mean, we can go back
Agreed.
and there's people who are still Champions of Kamigawa fans or whatever, right? But like, that wasn't the best. I
Hey.
mean, like, let's be real. Like,
GP Detroit, I made hundreds of dollars on that limited format.
Sure,
I
right.
love
but
that
from a
format.
set design standpoint, it's probably not as good as a lot
Was
of
it the
others.
best,
great.
or did you have the most fun because you won?
I had a very
But
good time.
people have those
Right.
memories attached to that, right? Like, that's still a thing. And I think that applies to a lot of, like you're saying, a lot of those standard formats, because that's when they had their success, or when things were hopping at their local store or whatever. And that was the best for them. You know, and it's just like, it's hard to
Man,
compare
if
because
I
different
could've-
ones are good for different reasons.
If I could have bottled the feeling of, and if anybody remembers Star Wars Kid back in the day, when I beat Star Wars Kid at GP Detroit with my mono
Yeah.
blue deck
Yeah.
on day 2 of Betrayers of
Goofball.
Kamigawa Limited, let me tell you, it was, you know, it was incredible. But that doesn't make it the best limited format of all time, but it makes it
Right.
one of mine. Either way, let's move out of the first pick to gather the townsfolk. Thanks to our sponsor, Mana Traders, the best tool to enhance your Magic Online experience. Use the code MAGICMIKES for 12% off your next subscription with Mana Traders, and tell them we sent you, because we appreciate them sponsoring the show and keeping us on there week to week. Wanted to check out a few things that were happening in the community. One of the things that was super cool, and we'll see if it shows up correctly, because Lord knows X these days is a crapshoot.
Also, in the chat, I love you, Hipster Sanio, but no, F all the call blades.
Callblade was Callblade, for example, that was incredible because I was there in Paris when they literally named it. I was sitting right there when
Like-
Patrick Chapin said it's called Callblade, and I was just like, I felt that like tingle, like, oh, that's a
The
moment.
thing is,
That's a
like,
moment.
Those games were good if you just want to do high level player versus high level player,
Right.
Sure,
but they were crap every other
they
time.
were
Yep.
pretty
Like-
dog crap. It was best player always wins, and
Yes.
every pro is going to love that, and every
Yep.
casual player is going to like, this format's terrible and sucks, and I hate
Yeah.
it. I'm not having any fun. Want to take a look at here at this this concoction here from at Max Makes Magic on
Yeah.
Twitter, who has a lenticular treatment of a lightning bolt where you turn it one side and it's one way, and the other side it's a different kind of promo lightning bolt versus like the M12 or something, where
Right.
it came back
Mhm.
for a minute. And I just like, while the card is probably thicker than your average Magic card, your thicker than average Magic card also comes with commander decks these days.
I'm gonna say something. We can talk about it off the air, but I can tell you that there is a way that those are almost the right thickness for a Magic card,
But it's right there.
and
So it's
I can
right.
leave it at that. We can talk off the air, but
I'm
like
sure Wizards would love to make this.
That's-
I would love to
that's
see this.
that's a thing I know.
right.
So I'll leave it at that.
It's a style.
That's
of
why when I
printing.
saw it, I went,
Right.
I'm gonna refrain from commenting on this.
There you go. Look, if Wizards takes inspiration from this, great. If they've tried stuff like this, awesome. I think this is great, and weird, crazy ways to show and showcase cards, I'm always for.
Yeah. Lenticular animation is a thing that is not horrifically difficult to reproduce.
I mean, we've been doing it since the Cracker Jack box days. so,
Yeah.
you know.
It's true.
And like Power Dragon said, it is possible to do on a relatively thin, flat surface. So I wouldn't be shocked to see something like this in the future. And but this example is like the best possible example, I think, because you have these. I think that, you know, unless you go with, I'm trying to think of other Magic cards that have 2 iconic printings.
Well, it's not that. It's
Birds
also
of
just, like,
Paradise.
yeah, like if you want to do birds, or if you want to do like a Lotus, but the Lotus opens.
Oh, that's
you know,
cool.
like you could do stuff like that, but like you
Sure.
kind of have to.
Yeah.
You can't just throw it on any card. It has to be a thing
Right.
that you have to put extra thought into making it work.
Right, you want it to be iconic, like a lightning bolt. You know what I mean? Like something it's very well done, like a lightning helix or something. I mean, something that's really cool.
Yeah, helix would be a fun one.
That'd be neat. Another thing that popped up this week was MDG Arena Festival in a Box Chaos Sealed event. Now, then for MagicCon 2024, you can buy Festival in a Box packages, which is cool and fine and all. But now you can actually win them by playing in an arena event, which is really neat because you can win a Festival in a Box for Las Vegas 2023. Bring it up here on the screen here for you guys. Where, you can get a mystery booster box, convention edition. You can get the Dan Frazier's Mox box, secret layer drop, a Relentless Rats non-foil, a Chaos Draft with 24 different packs in it, which is awesome. And in order to win that, you can just play for 5,000 gems in this arena event. And, or if they sell out by the time you get 6 wins, then you can also just get $250, which I thought was really cool and an interesting way to just kind of move around these festivals in a box that don't always sell, for example, or a way to get them that's really neat and interesting for Magic Arena players.
This is a really cool thing.
I think it is a neat thing. It's a different way to use Arena as a promotional tool. Mm-hmm. I think it's a way to get product to people who may not be able to always be able to afford it necessarily. Mm-hmm. Like, there's a chance you can get in and give it a shot, and just see if you can earn one. So, like, this is cool. This is the type of promotion I like to see from companies. So just like, hey, we have this thing, we know it's sought after, it's valuable, it's worth a couple $100. Let's just see if we do a promotion, see how people feel about it. And how many are they going to end up giving away? Like, I don't know, maybe 50, 100. I don't know. Like, but it's still a cool promotion to get more people to try Arena that may not otherwise, just because there's a $200+ price. You just call it a $300 prize on the other end after shipping or whatever for a lot of it.
Yeah.
And get some of those arena only players maybe into Paper Magic, which I think is
also true.
Great angle. Now put promo codes in the packs.
Please.
If I use my F-bomb this year.
We can't use F-bombs, but listen, either way, Festival in a Store
packs
is also happening between January 5th and 21st. Check your local game stores out to see if they can have it, because that will also kind of give you a different way of playing this chaos sealed format, and winning your own Festival in a Box just like that. I thought that was right.
Yeah, to add on to that, Wizards has been doing a lot of stuff with local stores lately too. There was like some scheduled like two-headed giant kind of thing that they had coming up. Mm-hmm. There was, I think, around Halloween, there was I want to say Innistrad themed something or other that they were doing. So they're at least trying to, like, hey, let's get people into the retailers. Let's do some fun little promotions that are different, that aren't, I mean, they're competitive, but they're not the highest level of competitive, just to engage as many people as possible and get them in the door.
Yeah. At this point, there's no, excuse is not the best word, but there's no reason that you can't sort of do these promotions at this point. At this point, it's time to go. Yeah. Let's all go back into the LGS. Let's go in and play some Magic. Let's go have fun with each other. Like, let's do this and create cool ways to do that. So Ravnica Remastered is around the corner. It'll be here early next month. It'll be all spoiled in like a week or two, over like in a couple days.
Wow.
So it'll be here before you know it. And one of the things that they busted out today was that, surprise, there are going to be serialized versions of cards in Ravnica Remastered. Not the craziest thing in the world, not completely unheard of or unprecedented, but it's also good to know that, hey, there's going to be X of 500, old bordered fetch land, or shock lands rather, that are going to be super rad. Those Birds of Paradise and that Niv Mizzet are going to be super wanted, and we'll see what else becomes serialized in the set when it shows up.
Yeah, this is interesting because previous to this, I think the hottest like serialized cards were like the Soul Rings, right? But this is a thing when you're talking about shock lands that practically everybody plays in every format. So like, these could be some of the most sought after serialized cards. So this will be kind of interesting.
It's funny to me. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, like, just looking at it now, again, old man Magic, looking in the lens of history, Shocklands might be pound for pound the best designed Magic cards ever. They are just the right amount of life. Ooh. They have both land types, so they're very exciting. They don't break any reserve lists. They fit in so many decks. They can be reprinted and people still get excited about them. You can put them in different formats and people get excited to play with them. You bring them back into standard, people get excited about that. You know what I mean? Like they are very timeless in ways that I think they wanted the fetch lands to be, but the loading screens for paper were a problem. Whereas, shock lands are just wonderfully ubiquitous.
Yeah.
Yeah. The best designed ever. Like that's
a take that is a nice temperature.
Yeah, I can't
like that temperature. That's a warm take.
Yeah, it's not like crazy enough that I'm like, oh, this can't be true. But then like it's good enough that I'm like, yeah, maybe.
Yeah. I like it. Breaking news, Evan with a good take.
Man, I don't know who got that experience of going to wizards.com back in the day and they just like you clicked on it and it just said like just Temple Garden was right there. And it was huge and it filled up the whole screen and it was just Temple Garden. Look at it. And they weren't even named Shocklands back then, right? They were just like, my God, did you see that Ravnica land? And people are flipping out. Like, that was an incredible moment. And ever since then, other than the fact that they only reprint them in Ravnica sets, the Shocklands have been absolutely incredible, start to finish.
Yeah.
And I think that's amazing.
So what has followed up from this tweet, though, and you highlighted it in the doc here, and I wanted to point it out, is that Michael Caffrey, who's a well-known retailer for Tales of Adventure and just like a extremely well-respected and knowledgeable retailer of Magic cards, points out that the X of 500 on these cards means that there is going to be a metric ton of serialized Ravnica Remastered cards. He says that 35 serialized cards that have 500, using the same math, means that 300,000 boxes need to be opened universally to get them all open.
Now, this assumes he knows the rate. That to me is the big thing. Now, previously, it was 1 in 12 boxes would get one. If that amount is smaller, then the total print run would be smaller. And as I understand it, they do have to explain that to some nature in terms of the rate that you would pull them. So if that number is smaller, it's not going to be this like, oh my God, there's 1 million boxes and they're going to go as low as they can. Maybe they print less of them and therefore the frequency is a little bit higher. But if the whole set is printed less, then the whole set is going to be worth more overall, which is kind of what everybody wants.
Well, I also want to say too, we had a lot of serialized cards in what was it, Dominaria, the last one that had like the artifacts that had the weird whatever art, I forgot what you call that, the sketch art or whatever. Right. And I think almost every one of those had a high number of serialized cards. So we've done this before where there's been a bunch out there, and I still don't remember seeing a ton of those, even though I know they exist. I've seen a couple of handfuls of them,
right,
and maybe a few in person. So even if there are a lot, they're still probably going to end up still fairly dispersed, I would think. But they also weren't cards as hot as, Birds of Paradise and Shocklands either.
So as a retailer, either of you, how does a serialized card or the distribution of the serialized cards or the number of serialized cards, because we don't know that 35 is a real number, that's an estimate.
Right.
How does serialized cards in these booster packs make you feel as a retailer? Because at sale, probably at release, they go way, way up. But we've seen them dip precipitously as soon as they've started getting opened.
Yeah, but that's like pretty much any card, right? You'll see pre-orders on a lot of Planeswalkers be $50, and then by the end of the first week, they're $22. Like that's pretty normal. So I wouldn't.
Yeah, the amount of those cards aren't enough to kind of sort of bank on in terms of like what you expect to get out per se. Like, yes, it's nice and it's a spike, but it's often a very rare thing. I think overall the market is very skittish. There's a lot of people sort of rumors going around that this is a very low pre-ordered set because Dominaria Remastered kind of burned a lot of people, and that it felt like there was way too much product. A lot of product went way, way low, got super duper cheap. Some of it's still available, for example. Whereas I think you want these times of remastered products to just kind of, blip and then go away. Like Time Spiral, remember? It just blip and then it went away. Like, I think that's what you want, and not like there's still Dominaria Remastered, boxes right now on super discount versus like saying, hey, Ravnica showed up in January and left in January. Like that would make a big impact.
Yeah.
And I think that's what people are sort of wanting, but I'm not sure if they're able to bank on it at this point.
I think also on serialized cards, some of those are going to be things that I think 5 or 8 or 10 years from now become more valuable as people start trying to collect them or get like full sets or try to get the number 12 of all the different ones or whatever it is, right? I think that's what's going to drive those long term. I think in the short term, they'll have whatever value they have, but it's not going to be anything crazy. I think like a lot of things, it's just time passes and fewer of them exist or whatever. And then you're going to start seeing the value tick up on them. I mean, in some ways, I feel like we're starting to see that about some of the masterpieces and stuff. They sort of flatlined for a long time. And then now you're starting to see more of them come traded or more people looking for them or trying to fill out their commander decks with the special versions. And some people who weren't around when those were printed are now trying to get their hands on them. And you're seeing a little bit more movement. So I would expect something similar with these.
Yeah, so one last thing here for Gather the Townsfolk was Mark Rosewater has an odds and ends article for the end of the year. And one of the things that he spoke about there was kind of the wordiness of things and stuff that we brought up here before. Can you provide context to the word creep on recent cards? Someone says it feels like every card has to have at least 18 lines of text and it's exhausting. And then he says the shift to a more eternal world has made us reevaluate complexity a bit, but he does agree. Cards from the Lost Caverns of Ixalan are on the high end for the word count. R&D is aware of it, and it's a topic they've been talking about. Inertia tends to push us towards complexity, so it's important to stop and take account from time to time.
Yeah, that's always tough, though, right? Because when you want to do something, like the first issue is like Magic has a language, right? So like things have to follow a certain structure so they can do the exact thing you want them to do. Because as gamer nerds, if you don't word it that way, we're going to do the dumb thing with them. Right? Like, so that's like the first issue.
Right.
And then it's okay, now that we want to try something new, how do we word this mechanic? How much reminder text do we put on the card or not? Right? Like, and it kind of leads to there being a lot of words on stuff. But I will say, outside of maybe like whatever that guy was, Sovereign, Okinic, Ohao, or whatever, most of them you can still figure out what they do fairly easily after you read them once.
Yeah, there's just still a lot of words.
Just
like even if you can figure out what they do.
Like it just feels like we kind of get into this point where it's like everything needs to be modal, right? And that kind of gets a little exhausting because for me, like what was the cool part of split cards, right? That they were a modal kind of card, but they were kind of 2 cards, which was really neat and interesting. Well, when everything has 2 to 3 different modes, like nothing kind of has modes, you know what I mean? Everything kind of does everything.
Yeah,
I look forward to cards that have a line of text, 2 lines of text. I think those are brilliant. I love those. I look forward to those.
Yeah, but it's also, the word creep goes with the power creep, right?
Right.
So it's tough to print exciting
sometimes.
new cards. Sometimes.
There are some cards right now that have a lot of words that don't do much of anything.
Right, but there aren't a lot of the other way around.
Yeah.
Right?
But I don't mind it. I don't think the words bother me. To me, it's more just, is it an actual complex card? I think that's the bigger issue to me. Like if I read it and go like, oh yeah, that's cool, whatever, that's fine. But I think if I read it and then I have to reread it and then I'm like in the middle of a game going, oh crap, that doesn't actually do what I think because it says this thing on it instead. Like then we start getting into problems.
Right.
But I get why it's another thing people are concerned with because it's overwhelming to see it.
Right. I mean, I think like there's points in this show where we'll talk about upcoming cards and I'll skip over some cards because I'm like, you know what? I don't feel like reading 100 words. You know what I mean? And then try to explain like, okay, so let's go back. Let's talk about the first part of this saga. And then it's going to flip into so-and-so. And it's going to do 7 different things. Don't flips back into such and such. You know what I mean? Like, man, that is really exhausting. In some ways, I'm glad they're cool and they're powerful. In the other ways, I'm like, man, I wish you just did like one thing really well, really powerfully, really succinctly. Versus,
you know what though? Pharmacist just had it exactly right. The number of cards I play that have a bunch of words, and then my opponent just forgets it has reach is awesome. Like seriously, I can't count the number of times in Arena that's happened. I've literally told my audience watching me that like my opponent's gonna forget I have secret reach, and sure enough, they attack right into it and just ignore that.
And that's like 2 words.
The first word on the card is there, and they just ignore that for all the other text.
Yep, reach trample. Didn't read it. Sorry. You know, like so. I'm not sure if that's going to change a lot, but I thought it was neat. Let's move on here to Desperate Ravings, in which there is some interesting stuff to talk about. I absolutely adore the Magic Data Science Twitter account at MTG_DS, where they talk about, hey, there is an outlier in terms of the on-play advantage. Now, we've known about this for a very long time. This is not news per se in that the starting player has an advantage. This has happened, far as I can tell. I'm talking ever since I heard someone say starting player has an advantage, it's never changed. And mathematically, they have proven that. However, it's gotten worse. And in fact, for the Lost Caverns of Ixalan, it is the worst that they have seen. And I'm guessing 15, 20 sets, 25, 30 sets, where it's the most important that you go first versus not. And do we need to change something? Do we need to do a Hearthstone-esque thing where, the second player gets to draw an extra card, or they get to play an extra land, or they get an extra mulligan, or something to let them give some sort of advantage? Because going second, it just puts you on the back foot, period.
Yeah, that's tough. But I mean, I don't feel like this revealed anything we didn't already know. I mean, if you'd even asked me, I was going to say it's probably between 3 and 5% difference, and it's 4.5 according to their math. So,
but that's as bad as it's ever been, right?
Right.
Like, that's the thing.
Sure.
Because you can.
And is that down. Right? So the first question is this a problem we're interested in solving? And I think that the answer is probably. Like, you don't want the game that you invented to be complex and interesting to be a coin flip.
Right.
Or to be a coin flip depending on who goes first. You want the game to matter, not just who goes first to matter.
Right. Like, to me, the best limited set of all time is Dominaria. That first person advantage or first player advantage was 1.4%, not 4.5. Like, it is 3 to 4 times what it was in that set. And that to me is starting to get like a serious outlier. Like, at which point do you go, hey, we need to work on how we either design sets, or we have, starting players do things, or starting players, lands enter the battlefield tapped, or whatever we wanted to do. Because it feels like, Magic as a game has worked on its mulliganing system many times, multiple different ways of doing mulligans, right? But they've never really worked on first player advantage and trying to keep that down. But the fact is, again, based on data, couple years ago, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, wasn't a really a big deal. Now it's kind of gotten to the point where statistically we can prove it's kind of a big deal. 1 out of 20 games is going to come down to you went second instead of first.
There's some other points, and their data is normally good, and I'm sure they test it and compare it certain ways. But I'm always curious about other numbers when I see data, not just in Magic and everything, like stuff around the numbers. Like, do we know like average ranking of players or whatever, people participating in events, right? Do we know, is it because of the casting cost of certain cards being higher and the first person who reaches 5 mana is doing a thing, right? Is that a thing we need to be approaching or attacking versus just like the first or second issue of it, right? Like, what element is causing it to be faster? Because like, in a vacuum, it's like, okay, cool, that 4.5% means something. But it's how are we arriving at the 4.5%, right? Because there could be a lot of different factors, and may not even be totally about just going first or second. And if it is, it's like, okay, what's the reason? Like, where's the turning point that leads to this being a win more often than a loss?
It's wild to me that we can say, like, for me, I think like definitively, Phyrexia All Will Be One was one of the fastest, most blisteringly fast formats I've ever played outside of like Zendikar block. And that's unique about it. And I like when sets are unique like that. But somehow it got even worse to be the second player with Wilds of Eldraine. It was even worse on March of the Machine. And now it's the worst with the Lost Caverns of Ixalan, where it feels like if I lose the die roll or whatever, I feel like, well, we're kind of in an uphill battle by default, and sometimes it's not as easy or not as hard, but it's wild to me that, again, we've kind of gotten to this point. And at which point do we do something? Do we try something?
Yeah, I would like I said, I'd like to see a further breakdown, because even over going over their numbers, they're saying War of the Spark, you were at a disadvantage going first.
All the way
according to their math. Yeah, so it's like, okay, what makes that a disadvantage in that environment versus an advantage in this environment by, 500%, basically, like that difference. Like,
well, War of the Spark was so grindy and had all of these planeswalkers that were prison pieces that the extra card mattered that much more, maybe.
But that's kind of the funny thing, right? You will have people say that, oh, that format was so bomby and it had all these crazy cards, and like they may not like that, even though it was technically more balanced on the play draw, right? Like, so if people are happier, even though going second has a bigger advantage, is that better or worse?
Right.
All right. So let's go to what I would describe as kind of the real drama of the week. Because today, or at least a couple days ago on 11/28, was the first anniversary of what is arguably the biggest flop in recent Magic history, and that is the 30th anniversary edition. This was $1,000 for 4 packs of technically proxies that were not tournament legal. That did include them printing Lotuses and Dual Lands and Moxen and things, basically alpha all over again, with a different card pack in a special package, $250 packs, and all that entails. Trying to build a marketing campaign for it, trying to get people excited about it, trying to get people in the community to kind of sort of explain it. You saw us here on the show trying to explain why these things were happening, not that it matters. And then at the other end of it, and this is something we also said, was that the collector market doesn't really care what podcasts say, and they don't really care how mad Twitter users are. And if they're going to buy it, they're going to buy it. And if they don't buy it, often that makes it that much more valuable. And the way Wizards took a lot of what appeared to be excess stock that they made and sent it to stores so that stores could help keep their lights on with it, and that these cards are worth money. And you can go see that the Savannah is almost $200, for example, when a real one, third edition is $300. And you say, I've got a cube and I would like to have a real Magic card to be a Savannah, but I don't need the real, I'm going to play it in a legacy event Magic card. At which point do you say it's not a big deal? And at which point, that we also discussed, was what fellow Commander player are you throwing out of the room because they have a 35th anniversary, whatever? Like, I just don't see it. You're just not.
I mean, okay, this is probably the hot take that gets me canceled from a lot of Magic players, but this project really didn't matter. Like, it was, if anything, I viewed it at Wizards just testing where the line is. Because at some point, you have to do that. And they just went, let's see if people will pay $1,000 for a product. Turns out, a lot of people won't. Yeah. So now they know it's somewhere between like 150 and 1,000, right? We don't know where that number is. The next thing we see will probably be a $250 to $400 product. And we'll see if people buy it or not, right? That's going to be a thing. But, seeing people comment on here about, it ruined Magic Wizards' reputation and it cost them all this business. But like, did you not see that they just said $1.3 billion?
The biggest year ever, the best gains ever.
Like, honestly, the people saying that, like, you look dumb. Like, you're just outraged complaining about a thing that's simply not true. Like, maybe you say, well, if they didn't do that, they would have made 1.4 billion or whatever, right? I guess maybe that's a real argument. Okay. But like, when your gains are 9% over last year or whatever, like, awesome. Like, are we upset about it? Some people, sure. But at the end of the day, you weren't going to buy it even if it was $500.
Right.
A lot of us weren't, right? So they tested the market. It didn't work. I don't even know why we're even bringing. I mean, I know why we're bringing it up because, it's our job on a podcast. But like, to see people post about it and bring it back up, it's like, you're only doing it for clicks and rage baiting. Like, there's no other value to that.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of why we're bringing it up. Hey.
Yeah, I feel
on
you.
Our podcast.
Just so we're letting you know that there was some,
we're aware. But yeah, I mean, we definitely received some interesting comments last year at this time when we were like, this is not a big deal. And
how dare you?
I still maintain that.
And I'm like,
and
just don't buy it.
Yeah, just don't buy it.
I also want to say this. I think a lot of people that walked away because of that were going to walk away soon anyway.
They were looking for something.
I mean, Evan, you know this. Like, people who come into stores are just like, a lot of them are already one step foot out of the door. They're looking for the one thing that, whether they lose 4 or 5 tournaments in a row, whether, a thing they wanted they can't buy because it's sold out, whatever it is, they will try to find something and say, like, that's it, I'm done with this game, I'm tired of it. But like, you were already tired of it.
Right. And
this was just a thing that gave you a reason that everybody would agree with you on to walk away. That's all.
And that's not a value judgment.
No.
That's just that you're using the wrong excuse.
Exactly.
And that's an unfortunate side effect of our current culture that we live in.
Well, a good example is for entrepreneurs. I see a bunch of them hold on too long because they can't justify a good enough reason that's not themselves or them changing or whatever, that it's not good enough to close, right? But the minute it's, well, our employee cost went up 5%, or this product we used to carry is no longer available and it's costing me business or whatever. Like, it's something that you could tell people that they'll agree with and understand, and you can walk away effectively in their mind with no shame. Right. This sort of feels a lot the same way, that you already had your mind made up. This just made it easy because it was the discourse of the day that everybody's going to agree with and be mad about.
Right. There was a certain amount of sort of stigma that was attached to it, and for me, the thing that I remember about this is that the stores that would get these would just quietly sell them in whatever method they would sell them, or give them away, some of them, but a lot of them would sell them to keep the lights on. This would help a lot of friendly local game stores. And so because there was such a stigma around it, they can kind of, say, hey, we have the 30th anniversary packs now. They go, well, we'll ship it on TCG Player, we'll ship it on eBay, we'll send it on our digital storefront, and we won't make a big deal out of it.
Sell it out the back door.
Yep. And I'll be real,
like the lights on.
I still go to a lot of different stores, especially when I'm traveling to events or whatever. I hit up all local stores. Most people you go see at a store don't care about this at all. It's not even a discussion.
They wouldn't even know what you're talking about.
When they see a card, they're like, "Oh, that's kind of cool."
Yeah.
That's it. It's not a thing people are walking around up in arms about. They're not saying I'm never buying Magic because Wizards made this $250 booster pack. Like, it's just not a point. Like, we see it, especially on Twitter. I mean, like, that's the place for discourse, right? But it's just almost a non-discussion in most places. So, like, I was almost surprised to see it pop up on Twitter this week. And then I went, oh, yeah, it's Twitter. Never mind.
Yeah, I mean, and Twitter is not real life. And as much as some people think it is not real life. And in the real world, it kind of went with a ho-hum. Wizards found a line. It helped out some stores. Some collectors got some stuff they liked. And there's a secondary market for the stuff, whether you like it or not. And that's the end of the day.
I was just mad that I woke up like 15 minutes late and I couldn't buy 10 of them.
Dang.
I was literally going to. I'm not even joking. I was gonna shell out and just go, because I know these are going to be worth something, because people are not going to buy them. That was honest to God the truth. Yep.
They are. Next up here, Mark Rosewater's Blogatog. There was a question about universes beyond stuff, and they noted here the question was like, when the Transformer stuff came out with Brothers War, I didn't really care because it was like extra stuff that was in set boosters or whatever, and there was the shattered stuff and the collector boosters, which was cool. But now Jurassic Park stuff is here, and it's also kind of found semi-randomly in set boosters. It's kind of hard to get. And they're like, hey, it sucks because, if I like Lord of the Rings or if I like Doctor Who, I can go all in on those products and know exactly what I'm getting, and or collector boosters to kind of get special versions of those things. Whereas for Jurassic Park, I got to either buy singles or just get super duper lucky. And the question was, he said, he ran a poll and said, which method of universes beyond do you prefer, like their own product or mixed in? And to say it wasn't close is an understatement. It is 88.8% said to keep them in their own product, their own secret layers, their own releases. And I think that honestly is the best way forward.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think that if you're a Doctor Who fan coming into Magic, you don't want to buy a bunch of Magic the Gathering packs that might have some Doctor Who stuff in it, or even guaranteed has some Doctor Who stuff in it. Mm-hmm. By the same token, if I'm a Magic fan and I don't want to cross the streams, buying a pack and having, something anachronistic in a booster pack might be a turnoff. Whereas I can focus my energy and attention on the thing that I most want, or the thing that I care about most from a thematic standpoint, the universe of Magic or the universe of Transformers, Tomb Raider, whatever, what have you. And I think that specializing those products makes the most sense. I'm just surprised at how big the discrepancy was. I would have thought that there'd be more controversy over this rather than 88% of people.
No, I actually assumed it was going to be greater than 88.
Really?
Okay.
Like, mostly because there's just too many players that are going to click on it just to say, like, I don't want any of that in my Magic, right? Like that alone was going to be probably 50% of the people clicked on the dang button. So I'm just like, yeah, that's the results I expected to see. Like, that doesn't surprise me. I just found the person who asked the questions argument to be a little weird because it said like, oh, I really liked it with Transformers, but I don't like it with everything else. And it's just like, but that's effectively the exact same thing. I didn't really understand.
It's
but,
a little 6 of 1, but I understand. I think
Yeah.
right now with the idea that they have commander decks plus collector boosters
Sure.
is probably the best setup versus a secret layer that's available for a month, or like good luck getting these cards in the set booster / collector boosters in other ways.
Yeah, the
Right.
thing for me that's a little weird is I don't know if where we've put them, we've needed to do so to sell more of that set, right?
Mhm.
Like Lost Caverns of Ixalan, I think was going to sell anyway. We didn't really need to have the Jurassic World stuff on there, right?
Sure.
I don't know what that adds to it. However, they've done this before with like Godzilla and Transformers or whatever, and I'm sure they have some amount of data that says, well, when we do this, maybe the set sells 8% better, or I don't know, whatever the number is. So maybe it's valuable
I mean,
when you
there's
don't have
certainly-
enough to do a full set.
Right.
don't
I
know.
mean, they certainly get the license for free. You know what I mean? They
Yeah.
get Jurassic Park, Jurassic World from the goodness of Universal's heart. So like, they're clearly paying for the privilege. And I do think I would be more interested in Jurassic World products if you gave me a, Ian Malcolm deck or whatever, or the dinosaur, fights back deck or whatever from those characters from those movies, because that to me is far more thematic. For example, Fallout, right? Fallout's coming. I can't wait to be able to sort of pick one of those factions and see what that plays like and see what that feels like in that world versus saying like, wow, I hope I pull a random Fallout from this upcoming Magic set that I might put together a deck of stuff,
Right.
Dude, let me tell you, if they could have done it and give me a card that was just hold on to your butts, like I'd have been about it. Like, I mean, like
Give me the
I
Sam
want-
Jackson deck. Let me see.
Yeah.
I would love it if they printed Teferi's Protection, but they called it Hold On to Your Butts with the Godzilla
oh, dude,
treatment.
Bruh.
give me a Samuel Jackson deck. Oh,
Yeah,
oh,
it'd be great.
like I'd have lost my
That'd
mind.
be perfect.
Oh, all right. Let's go ahead and turn the corner here to the finisher. Last week was Thanksgiving in the United States. So tell me, what are you thankful for in Magic this year, Ruben?
Well, I'm thankful for the One Ring, for being the best card in the Lord of the Rings and the Lord of the Rings set like it should be. Because it would have been real embarrassing if some random orcs had been the best card, right?
That'd been weird, right? God, you wouldn't want that.
Yeah.
Pretty awkward.
Power Dragon?
I'm thankful for Baldur's Gate 3. It actually gives us a chance to hang out together outside of the show and cast spells, and honestly, get to flirt with some pretty good looking NPCs. I'm just saying.
I'm a Baldur's Gate hoe. I just want to let y'all know I will
They're
flirt
not
with
bad.
all
They're
of
just
them.
drawn that way.
I will
Yeah.
take them all in. Well, I am thankful for Post Malone buying the One of One ring, giving us at least one of one top story this year that wasn't an awkward controversy.
Yeah.
Where we have to
Fair.
weirdly explain what happened and
Yeah.
how it's weird and we don't like it.
That's right.
And that ends another live episode of Magic Mike's. Thanks for joining us here to discuss all things Magic. Thank you, Power Dragon.
Hey, it's fun as always. And everybody, don't forget, leave us a 5-star review and a comment.
Thank you, Ruben.
Thanks for being here, and I'll see you next week.
Absolutely. We're going to move on here to our final slide. I want to thank our sponsor, CoolStuffInc.com, our co-sponsor, Mana Traders, my co-host, Power Dragon, and Ruben Bressler. You guys for watching and listening. I hope you support us at patreon.com/magicmics. Please follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe to everything social that tells people we exist. Catch us online, our Discord, twitch.tv, at Magic Mics, on Twitter at Magic Mics Cast, our Magic Mics subreddit, and like the Magic Mics page on Facebook. Or join us here next week, same time, on Wednesday, same place, right
Yes,
here on this
Wednesday.
channel, for another episode of Magic Mics. Good night, everybody.